massive round of applause. Mr. Calum Rodger, ladies and gentlemen. Calum Rodger.
Good evening. How are you all doing? My name is Calum. I'm through from Glasgow, where I study poetry. Do we have any poetry lovers in tonight? Yes, a few of you. And you admit it as well, which is very brave. Well done. But a chip on their shoulder and a desperate desire to be loved. Good evening. But poets and comedians are also very different. A different species, you might say. Comedians like to make us laugh. Poets would rather make us cry. The existential trauma of the human soul, now that's poetry. But what I'd like to do for you this evening is combine these ancient and sacred art forms and pose the question, how would a poet tell a joke? To that end, I've prepared a little poem that I'd like to recite for you this evening, entitled simply, Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road? Oh Muse, I prithee, why did the chicken cross the road? Who is this bird that cannot fly and has no fixed abode? And what the fuck's she doing stood outside the haberdashery? For we both know that this bird's home is barn or yard or battery. And given that she's more spare breasts than you can shake a dairy at, I guess she ain't no free-range posh bird, but a clucking proletariat. So forgive the strange narration, but it's a pretty odd location, standing outside Central Station checking out the CU Jimmy hats. What gives, Muse? What gives? The bird lives. What's in her mind? Inside that pea-sized brain, what brutal torments would we find? The consciousness of others is a struggle we all face. How fares that little clucker, boxed in by the human race? And Glaswegians at that, she hasn't a chance. See her dream of Chanticleer and avian romance, when a jakey in a tracksuit jumps out of the blue. Spare some change, hen. Fine then, cluck you too. The chicken howls inside. God, why have you forsaken me? I say God, replace that with the equivalent avian deity. I am a humble chicken, and 1,000,000 miles from home. This must be a clucking joke. Is someone pulling on my wishbone? But no, it's real, too real. And now my giblets yearn for cages, despite the harsh conditions and the really shitty wages. It surely must be preferable to all these endless worries, these signs of death surround me. KFC, chicken cottage, curries. Oh, wherefore art thou chicken, and wherefore art thou roe? And yet should my pace quicken, I could lose this heavy load. Oh, unbearable burden of chickenhood. Such is every rooster's fate. You spend your best years ovulating, then you end up on a plate. To cluck or not to cluck? I couldn't give a fuck. So she tottered out on Union Street, and sure enough was struck. The coroner gave his verdict, suicide. Then he took her home for supper, garlic butter, shallow fry. So like I say, I study poetry. I specialise in experimental poetry, avant-garde poetry, weird poetry. The kind of poems that you look at and your first response is, are you absolutely sure that that's a poem? They're the kind of poems I like. The one-word poem, for example. This is a genuine poetic form developed in the 1960s, just one word in the centre of an otherwise blank page. Well, you've got to remember it was the 60s, they were hippies, they just discovered weed, Zen Buddhism, emptiness was their thing, they were loving it. But I've taken the one-word poem, inspired by it, I've given it a comedic twist, and I've invented the one-word joke. I'd like to share a few of them with you this evening. Before I do so, however, I should let you know that the one-word poets didn't think of their poems as entertainment. They were more like objects for meditation, contemplation. So if you don't laugh, don't worry. You may just be experiencing a profound inner humour enrichment. So, jokes. Knock. I'd love to tell you who's there, but unfortunately the formal constraints of the joke. It's a shame, because you wouldn't believe who's behind it. Irishman. Light bulb. Sunday. Observational comedy. Cameron. Thatcher. The trams. Satires. The one-word joke, a very versatile form, as you can see there. Unfortunately, the one-word poem isn't, it's kind of out of fashion these days. It's kind of died out. It doesn't suit these jaded and cynical times. And in that respect, it reminds me very much of the Vikings. And so we segue seamlessly into the final section of my act. You see, I know nothing about Vikings. I study modernism, and Viking modernists are pretty hard to come by. So, in preparation for this evening, like my fellow performers, I did a little bit of research. So I looked at the Vikings page in Wikipedia, read about 2.5 paragraphs of that. That gave me the requisite knowledge, but I needed something else. I asked myself, how could I poetically penetrate the Viking consciousness? How could I grasp the essence, the spirit, the élan vital of the Viking mind? Naturally, I thought of eBay. And within minutes, I was able to procure this genuine Viking artifact for under £500. Now, the seller told me that it had once been possessed by King Canute himself. Now, I was a little sceptical about this at first, but when I put the helmet on my head, I actually began to channel the spirit of that ancient Viking king. He kind of used me as a Valhallan conduit, through which he narrated an old Norse saga never heard by modern ears. I was much impressed by his poem, and so as to save me having to write anything myself, I thought I'd bring the helmet along with me, put it on so you could hear the words of King Canute himself. So here goes. They call me the mighty King Canute. I like to pillage, I like to loot, horny my hat and shiny my boot. I was once described in Viking Vogue as, and I quote, kinda cute. I am the mighty King Canute, king of all the Vikings. I'm sure you'll all agree that I'm looking rather striking. Though often in my daily loot from Stockbridge up to Newington, folks stop and point and stare and say, who's that freak with the plastic helmet on? You see, things haven't been great for me for about 1,000 years. The Viking industry's on its arse, and I'm not cut out for these new careers. Telemarketing analyst, financial reverse psychologist, vet. Just take their money and kill their sheep, don't pretend to be upset. And you call that cold calling? You punks have no idea. We had no use for telephones, we had massive fuck-off spears. Those were the days. I was Thor's gift to man. I had half of Northern Europe in my merry Viking gang. England, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, we managed to procure. Well, some of Sweden, we'd have got the rest. But ABBA were away on tour. And now I'm just some washed up rag in this damn Scottish town. I knew the tide was coming in, but I never thought I'd drown. They call me the useless King Canute. I like to pillage, I like to loot, but they tried to dress me up in a tie and a suit, so now I'm on the special brew, and the occasional toot. You see, it's difficult maintaining the honour of my race when school children and buses are the only things I chase. I know that kids can be so cruel, but must they be so blunt? Ha ha, your name's CNUT, that kind of looks like... Oh, that's depressing. The name's Canute, I thunder. Yeah, what? Cannot, they chide. And though my helmet gives me strength, I'm crying inside. And on the subject of my bonnet, I must make a confession. This isn't a genuine Viking helmet, I know. Blame the recession. And if there's one thing I can't stand, it's these vintage Viking hipsters. Listen, son, I was wearing this shit before you were even in the picture. I hate this plastic crap so much, it makes me want to hurl. I feel like the loneliest stag do in the world. And yet, I soldier on, and though they laugh and though they stare, my Norse blood boils inside me. I stand in Bristol Square and yell, who here likes killing? The touch of blade on vital organ. A kid snaps back, the killing? That's so last year. Have you not seen Borgen? They call me the melancholy King Canute, an old Norse man in a modern rut. The last 10 centuries have really sucked, and I want to get out, but I can't be fucked. That's all for King Canute, that's all for me. Thank you very much.